What makes a 46-year-old man wake up one morning and kill his parents? It's a question that was asked recently in the case of David Reed.
There is still very much an active crime scene here.
He felt like he was nothing in the eyes of his parents.
It's pretty disturbing. We knew the people, they were nice, quiet people.
The end result was incredibly tragic.
Scenes that they've seen, they've come across, yes, it's quite confronting.
David Reed was a 46-year-old IT worker who was living in the southern suburbs of Sydney with his parents. He had no history of violence and no criminal ties. According to his friends and family, he was really quite meek. He wouldn't even usually stand up for himself in an argument, let alone be aggressive. So to suddenly find out that he had viciously stabbed both his parents shocked both those closest to him and the rest of the city.
It's absolutely horrific, and I never believed that it could ever happen to me.
One August morning in 2019, David Reed woke up. He dressed for work and he stabbed both his parents to death. His mother Diana was sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast. David stabbed her from behind and in the chest. His father was lying in bed. David proceeded to stab him. So what makes a man do something like that? How do you go from being the kind of guy that everyone describes as just the average kind of worker, the kind of guy whose family and friends wouldn't describe as being aggressive, the type of person who doesn't have a history of violence or known criminal ties, to suddenly wake up one morning and kill both your parents?
46-year-old David Reed appeared in court this morning, recovering from major surgery and charged with murdering his mum and dad.
When David left university, he got a job as a software engineer working in a company with poker machines. He worked in that same company until the day he killed his parents. Other than that, he kind of failed to launch. He didn't really have intimate relationships. He'd never had a girlfriend. He didn't marry or have kids, and he never moved out of the family home. His mother still did his washing and cooked his food, even though he was 46 years old. And during the court case, the court heard that David and his parents would often kind of have arguments, sometimes not speaking to each other for several days. It was clearly an unhealthy relationship, but perhaps not to the extent where anyone would have predicted that 2 lives would be lost. He had sought psychological help on numerous occasions, including in the months leading up to the deaths. When police were investigating the case, they found a number of documents that David had written that gives a really good insight into his mental state at the time. They were given titles such as Man-Child, Need for Friends, and Where It All Went Wrong for Me. He clearly saw himself as someone who kind of hadn't lived up to expectations. In the days right before the deaths, he published on social media a suicide note. After David stabbed his parents, he called 000. He told the officers he needed help with a murder-suicide. When police arrived at the scene, they asked him why he'd done it. He told them it was because his parents had refused to speak the things he needed to hear for a long, long time. None of that, though, gives any answers to why he actually committed these terrible crimes. The answer to this question I found out through talking to neuropsychologist Dr. Susan Pullman.
I said this in my report to the court. This is not a normal profile. This is a profile of someone who's had a severe brain injury, but he has never had a brain injury. But that's how the brain is presenting. And when I say abnormal, I mean grossly abnormal. I mean statistically an abnormal profile that would indicate this brain is not functioning in the way a 47-year-old man's brain should be functioning. So his knowledge of physics, chemistry and everything was all intact. I mean, a very, very intelligent man, but aspects of his reasoning, his problem solving, his ability to process information quickly was impaired like a brain injury. And I think that caused some of the bizarreness.
During neuropsychological testing, Dr. Pullman was able to measure the function of David's brain. What Dr. Pullman noticed in David's brain was something similar to what she had seen in the brains of children who had been abused. Children who have grown up in households where they have been abused or neglected don't have brains that develop in the same way as other kids. So sometimes they're unable to show empathy or recognise certain emotions. We can't say whether David experienced abuse. In fact, according to the testimony of his brother, his parents were attentive to his brother and altogether caring. But when David was questioned by Dr. Pullman, he said that he couldn't really remember any moments of affection from his parents, that he didn't feel like anyone ever paid attention to him, that he was just kind of brushed under the carpet in his household. What we can take from this is that, at least in his perspective, he felt like he was nothing in the eyes of his parents, and that his brain had developed in such a way that he wasn't able to register and understand emotions in the way the average person or a healthy functioning brain was able to.
His lawyer asked the court that Reid receive priority medical treatment and be put on self-harm watch.
He's very vulnerable. He's very troubled. He's very aware of his situation, and he's very withdrawn.
When it came to sentencing, David Reid received a maximum sentence of 10 years and 6 months, with a non-parole period of 5 years and 6 months. Interestingly, his family members, who had lost 2 relatives under such tragic circumstances, all said in the court that they wanted to stand by David. Of course, they thought there should be some punishment for his actions, but they didn't really believe he was evil or had done what he'd done in a kind of calculated fashion. Having watched this play out, I think this is really a case of mental illness and perhaps unhealthy family relationships that were all left untreated, and the end result was incredibly tragic.